Climbing is art. It's the aesthetics that mean the most to me. And that begins with the line that I'm interested in, the mountain I'm interested in, and then also the partnerships that I'm involved in.
It's like you just have this white canvas laid out in front of you, and you get to think how you want to lay your tracks down on it.
My nickname, my alter ego that I call myself when I'm out in the mountains and I'm really getting after it is Feroline. It's like Feral Caroline, because I have this feeling when I'm out there that I just feel like a more pure version of myself as a human, but also as an animal.
Trying to do something that really is impossible for you and working at it long enough until you reach a state where you can do this impossible thing. That is, I think, one of the best experiences in life.
I think climbing has been my life for the last 20 years. It's given me confidence to deal with life. It's brought me to some absolutely incredible places in the world.
If I would not have started with climbing 20 years ago, I would be definitely a totally different person today.
I've been climbing for so long that it sort of just feels like home. I mean, it feels like where I belong. And to just move seamlessly up through some terrain that looks improbable, but it goes and you piece it together and it's just perfect.
I went for hiking with my mom since I was a child. She still loves to be out there in the mountains, and I think it was my mom that showed me spending time outdoors is just the best time. I'm Angelika Reiner from Italy, and I'm a professional rock and ice climber. I think climbing has really changed me as a person. As a child, I didn't have much self-confidence, and through climbing, I got some successes at competitions. But on the other hand, I also learned that there can be quite a lot of failure as well. And so I learned to deal also with this one, and I made a lot of new friends.
I first got started skiing with my dad when I was a little girl, and then I wanted to go hiking in the mountains, and my mom said, no, you don't have enough experience, and that made me mad. So I took an outward bound course. I was afraid of heights. I was afraid of climbing, but I decided that I just wouldn't look down, and I worked through my fear of heights. I'm Kitty Calhoun. I live in Castle Valley, Utah, as well as Ouray, Colorado. I'm primarily an alpine climber, but I also like rock climbing, ice climbing, backcountry skiing, and mixed climbing too. My dad was a minimalist, and I think that rubbed off on me. So when we went skiing, he would just take the minimal amount of gear that he needed, and I had a good time skiing with my dad. And I think I took that and just applied it to when I left and started climbing on my own. I think climbing has been a tool for me to discover sort of who I am, what I believe, and where I fit in this world.
At 19, I did my first rock climb in the Garden of the Gods. And shortly after I graduated from college, I moved to Chamonix, France. And that was really where I got into uphill skiing and rope work and glaciers and all of those things that became the foundation for what I do in the mountains today. My name is Hillary Nelson, and I live in Telluride, Colorado. I am a professional ski mountaineer and alpine climber and lover of wild places. My sweet spot is really trying to climb and ski really remote locations, and I really love high altitude expeditions. And I'm also a mom. I have 2 boys, and that's another part that I've struggled with a lot for the last 10 years since I've had kids, and that is, being the mom that leaves for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to go on these expeditions. I'm kind of getting to a point where my kids are old enough and I'm starting to see that difficulty in my past, that sacrifice, that horrible mom guilt that I put on myself actually pay off, and that my kids see me as a person and they see that I live with a passion, and that's super important to me, that I can raise them with that sort of foundation.
I grew up in Minnesota. I think my first memories were coming out west from Minnesota, and then I just loved being on family vacation and being out in the snow and skiing. I'm Caroline Gleich. I live in Park City, Utah, and I'm a ski mountaineer and environmental activist. One of the things that's been hard for me as a petite blonde woman is just to get people to take me seriously. And no matter how much I've accomplished, I feel like there's this thing where I keep having to prove myself over and over. It took me a while to find my voice in this world and to have the confidence to go after some of these bigger goals. So when people do doubt you constantly, it can be hard to remind yourself that you are capable and you deserve to be doing these things. Part of why I call myself the animal is because when I was a kid growing up, my dad would have a contest when we were skiing of who was the most fierce skier. They would get animal status. And so I think just learning and being rewarded for that, skiing teaches young women to be aggressive and to be fierce and to charge. And I think it's really helped me find my confidence and also to be okay with a side of my femininity that is aggressive, because so often we don't equate the feminine with those other traits that are useful in mountaineering. So I think it's given me this more complete, whole view of my femininity.
In some sense, I started climbing back when I was probably 2 or 3 years old. My dad was a mountain guide and I was born below the highest mountain in New Zealand. So in some sense, that's been a part of my blood and a part of who I am since the very start, really. I'm Mayan Smith-Gobart. I'm living in the Franken-Jura in Germany, and I am a rock climber. When I started to take climbing more seriously and decided to try to make it a career, I think that one of the biggest challenges that I faced was selling myself to some degree, or really letting people know that I really am good. I think to overcome those hurdles was a large part of it, was actually climbing itself, was actually becoming more sure of myself and what I could do. And that is one of the biggest things that climbing has done for me, is given me a much, much larger appreciation for myself and my strengths and my weaknesses.
I had not really done any sports as a kid, and I grew up in a very suburban academic lifestyle, and then things changed dramatically. When I was 18, I was taken out rock climbing in college by a friend, and pretty much reshifted my life because I was so in love with this new thing. I'm Steph Davis. I live in Moab, Utah. I'm a climber, base jumper, and a wingsuit flyer. For me, climbing is a very grounding part of my life, and it's something that brings me definitely contentment and happiness. But, depending on what you're doing in climbing, so much of it can be this repeated failure, which is fine. It's kind of part of a process. But I feel like what's nice about it is it's not all one thing. When you go out climbing, it could be a fun day or a relaxing day, or a laughing day, or it could be a working on a project and you can never do the moves day, or I feel weaker today, or you just kind of never know. To me, having that in my life is very grounding. It's just like this thing that I feel contributes to making my life healthy and good.
Growing up, my dad first introduced me to an article about Denali and sort of the history of climbing on Denali. I wasn't a climber. We grew up backpacking and being in the mountains. I was immediately fascinated by it. And so I would go to the library and check out mountaineering books about the history of mountaineering. I'm Chantel Astorga. I'm currently based out of Lowman, Idaho. I work as a highway avalanche forecaster, and I am an alpine climber. The first ice climb that I did basically offered me this newfound motivation for, at this point in time, I was really into ski mountaineering and I wanted to go on trips around the world and climb and ski, big mountains, and pulling off this first rope solid ice climb basically gave me the confidence and the motivation that I am capable of doing this. And obviously I had a long way to still go, but I'd made the first step.
As climbers, we're like canaries in a coal mine, we see it first as alpinists, right? And so it's our job to tell our story, to tell what we've seen. And for me, it comes back to minimalism and not using up more than you need. This affects every decision that you make, and it affects a long-term view of use of our resources.
Just having this thought process of sustainability. How does that relate to me? How does that relate to the way I live, the choices I'm making? I think if we all have that mindset, that could be really helpful.
What I want to see is more women in positions of leadership. Fewer than 10% of mountain guides and 8,000 meter peak summiteers are women. I don't want to just see 50% of women at the table. I want to see 50% of women at the top.
Be comfortable with who you are and stop trying to fit into being the man in the room. Be the woman in the room. Embrace what you bring to a conversation, to an expedition, to a job, because you're a woman.
In recent times, one of the things that brings me the most joy is sharing my experiences and trying to inspire other people to believe in themselves and step out of their comfort zone and just take that first step.
Truly believe in yourself, and it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, you're capable of whatever it is that you want.